You ever sit at a dinner table full of people who think they know exactly who you are, but have no idea what you've done? That was me. Thanksgiving, long oak table, candles flickering, expensive wine flowing like the truth never could. My uncle raised a glass. To Danny, he said, the face of the family's future. Laughter, applause. Even my mother clapped. Danny smiled like a man who'd just invented gravity. No one mentioned the winter before, when the bank nearly took the house, when I quietly transferred $84,000 from my savings, just so the mortgage wouldn't eat what was left of my family's legacy. No one remembered the late nights in that freezing garage when I built the prototype system that Danny now pitched as his own. I didn't speak, didn't toast, just passed the mashed potatoes with a smile. Because when your name's erased from the story, you learn to write your own ending. And mine started right there, in that silence. It started with letters. Thin white envelopes from the bank, stacked on the kitchen counter like unpaid guilt. I still remember my dad pacing, hands on his hips, eyes on the floor. He said the machines were too old, the orders too few, that people wanted smart systems now, not welding work from a rusted garage. Mom cried in the pantry, quietly, like grief was something to be hidden behind canned beans and flour. They didn't ask me for help, not out loud, but desperation has a smell, and I'd grown up breathing it in. I didn't hesitate, logged into 6 accounts, drained every freelance dollar I'd stacked from late-night code sprints and underpaid contracts. $84,712. Gone in 2 clicks, transferred directly to the mortgage account. No ceremony, no thank you. Just silence, and a slightly less worried dad the next morning. He said maybe things were finally turning around. I didn't correct him, didn't say he'd been rescued by the daughter they never saw coming. Because when your family's drowning, you don't wait to be asked. You just jump in, even if no one learns how to swim. The garage always smelled like dust and motor oil, a place where time forgot to move forward. Old toolboxes, rusted shelves, a cracked leather stool my grandfather used to sit on back when this place still made sense. But under all that grime was potential. I cleared a corner, swept for the first time in years, set up a folding table, a secondhand monitor, and a laptop held together with tape and willpower. That's where it started, not a startup, not a company, just an idea no one took seriously, yet. A system to help low-income families manage home energy. No subscriptions, no data traps, just honest tech, built by someone who knew what it meant to stretch a heating bill into next month. I worked nights, wrapped in layers, fingerless gloves, code blooming on the screen like something alive. I wasn't building a product, I was building a way out. Eventually, I showed it to them, the parents, the uncle, even the cousin who'd once called me the quiet one. They nodded, said it was promising, said I should keep going. No one offered to help, but for once, no one told me to stop, and that was enough. He showed up with sunglasses on his collar and a Bluetooth earpiece he didn't need. Said Chicago had changed him. Said the MBA gave him vision. The family lit up like he'd come back from war. Pats on the back, smirks over wine. You should have seen him pitch, my uncle bragged, like degrees were medals, and charisma made you invincible. He walked into the garage one afternoon, looked around like he was touring a museum, asked what I was working on, then laughed. That's cute, he said. You're still building it yourself? I showed him the data, the working demo. the system that had cut one neighbor's power bill in half. He stopped laughing. Next thing I knew, he was offering to help with outreach, clean up the pitch deck, make things investor ready. I didn't protest, because part of me believed he could open doors I couldn't. That maybe we could actually pull it off. A real company, born in a dusty garage. The team became two. Well, not quite. I kept coding, testing, fixing bugs at 3 a.m. He started making calls, smoothing the message, telling people what we were building. But every time he said we, it sounded more like he. And every time I spoke, he talked louder. It came in a group text, a screenshot of an email from a VC firm. Subject line, interest in your energy tech prototype. My hands shook. This wasn't just a reply. It was the door, the one I'd been knocking on in silence for 3 years. Everyone gathered that night. Pizza boxes, cheap champagne. My uncle said, "This could be it." Danny raised his glass again. He'd been doing that a lot lately. Then someone, maybe my dad, said, "We should talk about structure. Investors like clarity, clean leadership." And just like that, the word CEO floated into the room like smoke. Not debated, not discussed, just assumed. Handed to the one in the blazer and perfect teeth. Me? I was technical co-founder. Support. Brains behind the curtain. You know, the quiet kind. They called it strategy. Said it made the team look more polished. Said we'd circle back once funding came through. I nodded, smiled, bit my tongue until it tasted like iron. Because I knew something they didn't. The garage wasn't just where I built a prototype. It's where I learned to disappear. And now, they were giving me the perfect chance to do it on my own terms. They slid the papers across the dining table. No lawyers, no formality, just family. That made it worse. Temporary delegation of executive authority, it said. Just to streamline the investment process, Danny added, casually sipping his third espresso. I flipped through the pages, legalese wrapped in warm smiles. Words like assign, relinquish, without recourse. Buried terms dressed up in harmless fonts. My uncle said, "It's just a formality. You're still the genius behind it all." My mom nodded like she didn't even understand what she was agreeing to. Maybe she didn't. I stared at the signature line, noticed how they'd already dated it for me, how they'd left a black pen by the corner, like it was a favor. The room went quiet, like they were waiting for me to stop being difficult. And in that silence, something inside cracked. Not loudly, but like glass under pressure. I didn't sign, not that night. But 2 days later, my dad came to me in the garage, said if I didn't sign, the deal would fall through, that we'd lose everything, again. He looked tired, older than I remembered, so I signed. And with one stroke of a pen, I stopped being the founder and became a ghost. The event was held at a converted warehouse, exposed brick, neon lights, rented optimism. They called it Demo Day, but it felt more like a coronation. Rows of folding chairs, everyone filled. VCs in blazers. Startup bros with 2 white sneakers. Someone handed me a name tag. It said, technical support. Not founder, not even developer, just support. I found a seat in the back, no spotlight, no microphone, exactly where they wanted me. Danny walked on stage like he was born to hold a clicker, talked about innovation, energy equity, his humble roots. Said the idea came to him one winter, watching his family struggle with heating bills. I felt my stomach turn, because the winter he was talking about was mine. The garage, the late nights, the sleepless fixes, He dressed it all in his voice and left me in the shadows. The pitch deck flashed behind him, polished, slick. My code reduced to 3 bullet points on slide 7. He closed with a smile, said, "We're not just building tech, we're building hope." And the crowd stood up. Everyone clapped, except me. I just sat there, hands folded, nails pressing into skin, wondering when silence had started to taste like revenge. But I didn't leave angry. I left ready, because if they thought erasing me was the end of the story, they'd clearly never read past the first chapter. I went back to the garage the next morning. Same cracked stool, same dust in the corners, but something felt different, like the air had thickened with clarity. No more meetings, no more family calls, pretending we were a team. No more pretending. They'd taken the crown, sure, but they'd forgotten who built the kingdom's foundation. See, the thing about code is, it listens, it remembers, and mine, it had a heartbeat. They'd taken the product live without asking, scaled too fast, cut corners I never meant to leave sharp, and deep inside that system, nestled like a secret between innocuous lines of logic, was a quiet failsafe. Something I'd written long ago, just in case. Not malicious, not destructive, just inconvenient. It triggered slowly, like a rusted valve leaking in winter. Tiny inconsistencies in energy readings. Delayed processing under heavy load. A soft unraveling, like thread pulled from the hem of a too proud suit. I didn't tell anyone. Let them pitch. Let them scale. Let them promise the world with smiles they didn't earn. Every headline they grinned for moved them further from the code they didn't understand. And every fix they attempted only deepened the cracks. It wasn't revenge, not really. It was the code saying, "You don't belong here." And for once, I didn't feel the need to fix things. I just sat back, watched the metrics drift, and let the silence do what I never could: speak. They rebranded it Rossi Tech, like it had always been a family vision, like the sleepless nights in that cold garage were part of some collective dream. New logo, new office, modern, sterile, all white space with fake plants and kombucha on tap. Danny gave interviews on local news, talked about his breakthrough, used words like mission-driven and clean energy for all. They plastered his face on LinkedIn banners. Investors posted selfies with him. Articles called him the next great mind in sustainable tech. My name? Never mentioned. And strangely, that didn't sting the way I thought it would, because the higher they climbed, the more fragile it all looked. They didn't know how the code breathed, didn't understand its limits, didn't see how every rushed update was like taping over a fracture. I watched quietly, from my apartment 2 towns over. No press, no fanfare, just logs, graphs, back-end reports still tied to the admin account no one bothered to revoke. They thought I was gone, but I was watching and waiting, and slowly the cracks began to form. Winter rolled in early that year, cold that bit through walls, and settled in the bones of old houses. The kind of weather my system was built for: smart regulation, adaptive energy use, safety over show. But suddenly, emails started popping up in public threads. Complaints. Not loud yet, but sharp. System keeps freezing during peak hours. Room sensors unresponsive. Anyone else seeing this? My heating bill just doubled. Isn't this supposed to help? They blamed the power company, then the installers, then user error. Anything but the truth. Because the problem wasn't with the homes, it was buried deep in the foundation of the code. In the lines no one bothered to audit. The architecture no one truly understood. Each new update patched the symptoms, but ignored the disease. I watched from afar, watched their support forums go from praise to panic, watched Danny tweet corporate apologies that sounded like scripted empathy. And still, they had no idea that the thing they thought they'd stolen was quietly, steadily rejecting them. Not because I broke it, but because they never learned how it breathed. They thought tech was just a product, but I'd written it like a living thing. And now it was shedding them like dead skin. It happened on a Sunday, the kind of night when families settle in, kids brush their teeth, thermostats hum to life, and nobody expects the dark to stretch longer than it should. At 6:47 p.m., the system hiccuped. By 7:03, homes across 3 counties were offline. No heat, no light, nothing but error screens and blinking routers. The glitch wasn't loud, it crept in, thread by thread. Buffer overflows, loop congestion, tiny details no investor pitch ever mentions. Phones lit up like emergency flares. Customer support crashed in under 10 minutes. Twitter turned feral. Then came the news stories. A single mother with a newborn, wrapped in blankets in a 42-degree living room. An elderly man in Fresno, hospitalized with hypothermia after his smart heater failed to respond. And there he was, front and center on the local news at 10, in a suit that suddenly looked 2 sizes too big, fumbling for answers that didn't exist, talking about an isolated technical issue while his eyes said, "We don't know what we're doing." And me? I was watching from my kitchen table, a chipped mug of tea in one hand, keyboard still open to the logs they never knew I could access. This wasn't sabotage. It was a warning ignored too many times. A system telling its new masters, "You don't belong here." And in that moment, the silence I'd chosen months ago echoed louder than every press release they'd ever written. They called a press conference the next morning. Short notice. Fluorescent lights. A podium with a Rossi Tech logo that now looked like a punchline. He stood behind the mic with the stiffness of a man who'd rehearsed every line, but no longer believed a word of it. "Due to unforeseen system instability," he began, "we are actively investigating the cause of last night's malfunction." His voice cracked on the word investigating. The cameras didn't miss it. Neither did I. One reporter leaned in. "Are you saying no one on your team anticipated this?" A second followed. "Was there a flaw in the original code?" He blinked, hard. You could see it. The moment the mask slipped, the confidence gone. The startup swagger, replaced by a kind of corporate paralysis. Someone handed him a note mid-question. He looked down, lips tight, mumbled something about external audits and third-party security assessments. They were scrambling, but the thing is, you can't PR your way out of a truth that lives in the backbone of your system, especially not when that system was never truly yours. He tried to pivot, thanked the team, promised updates, but no one clapped when he stepped down. No applause, no handshake, just silence, the kind that grows heavier the longer it's ignored. And in that silence, a chapter closed. Not because I forced it, but because he stood on a stage built from code he didn't understand, and promised the world something he couldn't hold together. I didn't need revenge. He did it himself. All I had to do was watch. The call started that night. Blocked numbers, voicemails laced with urgency. Not grief, not remorse, just panic wrapped in familiarity. My mother left the first one. I know things got messy, she said, voice trembling like the edge of a wine glass. But the company needs you. He needs you. She didn't say sorry, didn't say we were wrong, just needs you. My uncle called next, said they were under a lot of pressure, that they didn't realize how critical my role had been. My role. Like I'd been a cog in a system, not the hands that built it. The messages kept piling up, begging without admitting fault, offers of compensation, talk of second chances, but none of them said what mattered. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked why I'd disappeared. No one said my name with regret. And when people show you they care more about what you can do than who you are, you stop answering. So I didn't. I let the phone ring. Let the guilt stew on their end of the line. Let the silence speak for me. Because I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I was learning how good it felt not to need one. I packed light. 2 duffel bags, a battered laptop, and a heart still learning what freedom felt like. The lease was month to month, a 4th-floor walk-up in a graystone on the quiet side of Chicago. No elevator, no expectations. Just space, to breathe, to begin again. There was no big reveal. No, I'm back post. No revenge-fueled comeback. Instead, I joined a small open-source collective, mostly women, mostly overlooked, all building tools no one had the guts to fund because they didn't make money fast enough. We wrote code for community kitchens, for energy tracking in low-income housing, for people who didn't speak the language of pitch decks, but understood survival better than anyone in a suit ever would. There were late nights, sure, but they felt different now. Not like proving something, just building again, for the right reasons. And in a city where no one knew my last name, I started to remember who I was. Before titles, before betrayal, before silence became a strategy. Some days I'd still wake up thinking about it. The garage, the system, the deal I never truly signed. But then I'd open my laptop, read messages from strangers using the tools we'd made, and feel something better than pride. Peace. I passed a newsstand on the corner one morning, wind biting, coffee in hand. There he was, front page of a business magazine, headline slashed in red. Rossitech collapses after internal failures. Visionary founder, silent amid lawsuits. I didn't stop walking, just took a sip, let the bitter roast roll over my tongue like satisfaction. Not spite, not celebration, just confirmation. They say silence is absence, but they're wrong. Silence is presence, just not in places that no longer deserve you. I didn't post about it, didn't gloat, didn't message anyone back when the "you were right" texts came rolling in. I'd already won, not in a courtroom, not on some podcast interview, but in the stillness of mornings like this, where my name wasn't trending. But my mind was finally quiet. No more proving, no more waiting to be seen. Just me, alive, free. And sometimes, freedom doesn't come with fireworks. It comes when you walk past a headline with your name nowhere on it. And you don't feel erased. You feel untouchable. It was a rainy Tuesday when I reopened the folder. Tucked away on an old hard drive, its name was still the same, Roots V1. Inside it, thousands of lines of code. No buzzwords, no bloat, just clean architecture, designed by calloused fingers in a freezing garage. I read through it like a letter from my past self. A version of me that still believed people would do the right thing if you gave them something worth believing in. She was wrong, but she was also necessary. I didn't rewrite it, didn't polish it for some investor. Instead, I uploaded the whole thing to GitHub. No paywall, no license fee, no press release. Just a simple caption, built in silence, shared in clarity, for communities, not corporations. AR. And just like that, I gave it back to the people it was always meant for. Within days, it started spreading, not viral, not loud, but real. Local organizers forked it. Single moms in rental apartments used it to lower their bills. A trade school in Minnesota started teaching from the framework. No NDAs, no middlemen, no cousins in suits. And in that ripple, I found something I never got from headlines. A sense of closure that didn't need to be broadcast. Because legacy was never about who gets the mic. It's about what lasts when the noise fades. And this would last. People assumed I vanished. That after the headlines, after the fallout, I must have burned out, faded, folded. Tech blogs stopped mentioning my name, if they ever did at all. Industry panels forgot I was on the early invite lists. LinkedIn said I was open to work, as if I'd ever stopped working. But they didn't see the code libraries I'd been contributing to, didn't notice the tools quietly powering shelters, clinics, schools with more heart than budget. They didn't see me because I chose not to be seen. Not out of shame, but protection. Because when you've had your voice misused, you learn the value of building without a spotlight. Some friends called it a waste, said I could have sued, could have gone public, could have made a comeback they couldn't ignore. But I didn't want a comeback. I wanted peace. And peace doesn't need press. I wasn't missing. I was just finally home, in my own skin, in my own rhythm, creating not for approval, but for impact. And in that quiet space, I became something better than visible. I became whole. For a long time, I thought legacy meant recognition, a name etched on a patent, a plaque on a wall, a LinkedIn title in bold. But that was before I watched strangers use my work to heat their homes, light their kitchens, save money they didn't have to lose. They didn't know who built the system, didn't ask, didn't care. All they knew was that it worked, that it helped, that someone, somewhere, gave a damn. And maybe that's what legacy really is. Not how loud your name echoes, but how far your silence carries. The funny thing is, when they took everything, they thought they stole my future. But they didn't know I'd built something they couldn't brand, something they couldn't own, because it was never for sale. They built headlines. I built roots. And roots don't need spotlights. They need soil, time, stillness. Now, I don't chase credit. I don't correct people when they tell the story wrong. Because the truth, it always finds its way. Quietly, patiently, like water through stone. And when you finally stop trying to be seen, you realize something no nameplate can teach you. Legacy doesn't need permission. It just needs purpose. I used to think forgiveness was a grand gesture. Tears, reunions, closure delivered like a final line in a movie. But real forgiveness? It's subtle, not loud, not cinematic, just soft edges where rage used to be. I don't hate him. I don't even think about him most days. He lost more than I ever could have taken. And not just the company, but the trust, the name, the belief people once had in his voice. And that's the kind of justice I never had to lift a finger for. Because when someone builds a kingdom on borrowed brilliance, eventually, the floor gives out. And when it did, I didn't cheer. I didn't clap. I didn't call to say, I told you so. I just let it happen. Let gravity do what anger never could. There's a power in restraint, a sharpness in stillness. He tried to erase me, But I became unforgettable by not needing to be remembered. Forgiveness, for me, wasn't about making peace with him. It was about reclaiming peace for myself. And justice? Justice was letting the system expose the truth. One crash, one unanswered bug report, one broken press statement at a time. Not revenge, just reality, arriving right on time. Have you ever built something? Something you bled for, stayed up for, sacrificed for, only to watch someone else take credit for it? Not just the work, but the story, the narrative, the power. Have you ever sat in a room where your name should have been spoken and heard silence instead? Not because you weren't good enough, but because being quiet made you easy to overlook. If you've ever been erased, not loudly, but carefully, with a smile, a handshake, a "we'll circle back," then you already know. You know that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's armor. Sometimes it's a blueprint. Sometimes it's how you wait, patiently, deliberately, for the world to realize who really built the foundation. And maybe you're still in it, still watching someone else stand on your shoulders, pretending the view was always theirs. If that's you, drop a computer in the comments. Not because it fixes anything, but because someone out there needs to know they're not the only one. Subscribe if you've ever been counted out. Comment if you've ever written code, stories, ideas, only to be told you weren't marketable enough. And stay, not for the drama, not for revenge, but for something quieter, sharper, stronger, truth, legacy, and justice, without noise. Because in a world full of people fighting to be heard, there's a different kind of power in being the one who doesn't need to shout to be remembered.